Let's get into Throne of Allegoria. So the queen is dying. She is not dead yet, but she is dying here in the land of Allegoria. And each of us have our own little territories, and we're going to try and help ourselves a little bit better between now and the time she dies, as well as possibly after she passes away. So that's kind of the theme on what we're looking at. Martin's trying not to die. You okay over there? All right. So, big picture, what is it we're trying to do? Well, we're trying to score victory points. They'll be tallied up here at the end of the game, depending on how we do in the various aspects of this game. Now, how do you go about getting victory points? Well, it's all going to be accumulated, or most of it's going to be accumulated throughout the game and tallied at the end. But we're going to be doing various actions as well as battling out here on the various battlefields and predominantly moving up these tracks within our own home boards, as well as completing in the game, during the game, goal cards, as well as end game goal cards. Those are predominantly where your victory points are going to come from. So that said, let's give an overview on what it is that you're looking at here on the main boards. So over on the left-hand board to start with, at the very top, we have the round track. So the queen is alive, so the queen is standing up right there. If she were to pass away during the game, we will lay her down. As you can see, the game is going to take place over 6 rounds. Then over on the far right, top right corner is the Royal Decree card space. So we're going to read either the top or the bottom, and it'll be a universal rule breaker or a game-changing state, depending on whether the queen's alive, we'll read the top. The queen has passed away, we'll read the bottom. Over on the left side there are the in-game cards. I hate using that word because it sounds a lot like end game, but the during the game goal cards that we will be trying to complete is here, as well as the claim space or the bidding spaces for that action. Then the bidding spaces here for the various workforce cards and the workforce actions are here. There are going to be 5 at any one time, and then there's going to be a I split you choose mechanism that brings them from up there to down here. Then over here on the right hand board, or the main board, in the top left corner we have the Anarchy track up here, and then we also have the Alms track, alms for the poor, sir. Then we have the other 5 actions in this game. There are a total of 7 action spaces, 1, 2, 3 through 7. In addition to that, we have the amount of actions that we're going to be able to take depending on player count. 4 players, it's going to correspond to that column there. And obviously the same goes here for us taking the during the game goal cards. Then we have the Traveling Merchant card. There are going to be 1 card per round that will talk about the different exchange rates as we go along. Down below we have the Diplomacy track that we may be moving up. And then the main part of the main board over here has to do with the various territories. So everybody's home territory, and they can be anywhere. Like I could have chosen that one up there. They are asymmetric. They're just closer to where the players actually are. Every player has their own battlefield, their own tavern, and their own marketplace. In addition to that, there are the common tavern, the common battlefield, and the common marketplace, as well as obviously everybody having their own home territory. So that's everything on the main boards. Then in our own tableaus here, as you can see there, on our home board, we have 5 different tracks which correspond to the 5 main actions here in the game, having to do with soldiers, spies, merchants, bankers, and scholars, the 5 corresponding tracks. Then everybody has their own workers, or their own, depending on what they are when they go out here on the board, whether they are soldiers, spies, or merchants. Everybody has 10 of those. Then everybody has the same identical set of 5 cards, which are going to be placed down here to be able to activate special actions, these guild cards here. And obviously you have room for 2 of those there. Everybody also has 6 bidding tokens. And again, this is where the prototype nature of this game comes in. So as you can see, there are 2 0 tokens, bidding tokens. There are 2 1 tokens. There is 1 2 token, and then there is an asterisk or a wild token, which can be only either a 1 or a 2 bid value. And last but not least, everybody also has a die in their color. Now, again, this is a prototype, so these are regular 6-sided dice. How these will be is, for all intents and purposes, for our playthrough, the 5 and the 6 space will count as zeros because they only range from 0 to 4, as it were. So keep that in mind. 5s and 6s will be zeros. Then everybody has a small selection of starting cards. There are end game bonus cards here. There are 5 of those. Before the game starts, we are going to choose to keep 3 of them and discard 2. Then there are the, call it your house cards. This is what your role is going to be, the Lord or Lady cards here. Everyone starts with their choice of 2. They will choose 1. It's going to be an asymmetric starting position, and they'll turn it face up, and it'll be something of the house Rosalie, etc., etc. So we'll choose one of these, then we'll choose 3 of those, and then we will begin play. So that's everything that you're looking at, but how do you play the game? Now, the game does come with a pretty extensive and very good player aid here. However, the only downside to this is there are a lot of actions that are available on any given turn depending on what it is that you want to do. Each action has 3 available actions, or each, each selected action out here, you will have any mix of 3 options available. And honestly, they're similar enough but different enough to where I feel like it would be getting a little lost in the weeds if we went over all of these in detail right now. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give a high level for each of these 5, and then when we actually take the actions during the game, we'll go over those in depth. So without further ado, let's talk about how the game actually plays. The game takes place over 6 rounds, as you can see there. The exact same steps in this game are followed in each of the 6 rounds. Now, the game it says there are 4 phases in each round. There's a reset phase, a planning phase, an actions phase, and a cleanup phase. But in all honesty, the reset phase at the beginning and the cleanup phase are kind of redundant. So we're going to, for all intents and purposes, call it 3 phases. The first phase being the planning phase. So what we're going to be doing is everybody has 6 bidding tokens or action tokens available to them. What they're going to be doing is on their turn, if I am the first player here, then I will choose one of these in secret to place in any of the 7 available actions. So again, we have 5 here. We have 1 for the workforce cards and 1 for the during the game victory or goal cards there. So I choose 1 in secret and I put it down here. Then on Jess's turn, she will choose 1 of hers in secret. Maybe she chooses there. Shrey then chooses 1. And then Martin chooses another. And if he so desired to compete against here in the merchant action, there are 4 columns, 4 players, etc., etc. You'll notice that each of these shows 3 available, not 3 like that, but 3 available bidding tokens, i.e. the maximum tiles that you can bid on a single space are 3, but in any given single action, you're only going to be putting out 1. So in other words, we're going to go around the table in clockwise order, placing 1 around for 6 rounds until we are all done and all 6 are out. The important thing to note, zeros are blanks. They are merely bluffs. They are no value. So in other words, if I were to bid here, and then whenever we resolve, Jess bid a 1, I bid a 0. I didn't actually bid in that space. I just bluffed to maybe make her waste more bidding actions to bid there. So when we get to activating this action, that will actually come off and I won't actually get to take the action. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to place them out. 1, 2, 7. That is the planning phase. then we're going to go into the actions phase. The action phase resolves in the exact same order each round. We go 1, 2, 3 through 7. So whoever bids here, it's not the amount that you bid total here. It is how you did in context or in relation to your opponents. So for instance, if I bid 1 there, and let's say that Jess had bid a total, she had bid that and ended up like this. I bid 1, Jess bid 3. All that means is the order of activation is now going to go this, then this. We're going to look at this chart. It says she's going to draw 3 of the during the game goal cards. She may keep up to 1 of them. Whoever's in second, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, etc., etc. Now the reason, and I will grab one of these, and the reason you may keep up to 1 is because they are worth some amount of victory points, as you can see here. But if you do not complete them by the end of the game, they are worth -3 points, as you can see there, and English and German there. So use 3 Joker workforce cards on the same deploy action in the same turn. So what that means is the moment you actually trigger that, you do it, you then flip it over, you play it to your tableau, say, hey, I just did umpty umpty ump, I did it. Here, I'm going to score 2 points at the end of the game. So you're good to go. You're off the hook for the -3. Does that make sense? Good, easy enough, we're gonna move on. This space here has to do with the I cut, you choose mechanism down here. These workforce cards, I'll talk about what they do in a little bit, but there are 6 different suits or types of workforce cards. You'll notice that the icons in the bottom right hand and bottom left hand corner correspond to the 5 main actions out here. And there happens to be also a 6th one, which is a Joker. As you might could guess, yes, it's wild. All right, these range from 1 to 3 in value. Whoever is first, not because they place first, but the highest bid here, and all ties are broken left to right order. So in other words, if Shrey bid a 1 here, if it had been something along the lines, let's say there, Jess would bid first, or I'm sorry, Jess would actually take the action first, then Shrey would, because left to right, then I would. Whoever is last in this case, I also should back up, I'm sorry, the lowest bid here also will become the first player of the next round. It's easy to forget that. There's no iconography. I apologize for overlooking that. Thank you, it's right there, the first place. Thank you, it's small. Here, whoever is in last place actually cuts these, meaning they are going to choose how to put these out. So maybe on my turn, I look and I say, hey, I want that there, I want that there, I'm going to put that, and I'll drop those there. You'll notice that there are 3 distinct buckets of cards, 1, 2, and 3. So in this case, Jess being the highest bid, she would choose 1 bucket first, and she gets to keep both of the cards. The reason she gets to keep both of the cards is because her bid was at least 2. So let's say, for argument's sake, Jess chooses this bucket. She would then put those into her hand, and there's that. Now it becomes Shrey's turn. Now, even though he is second, he does not get to, if he chooses this bucket, he's going to take both of the cards, but one of them have to be discarded. He only gets to keep 1 because his bid was only a value of 1. If it had been a bid of 2 or higher, he would then be able to keep both cards. Obviously, if you choose the last bucket, there's only 1 card to choose, so you get to keep it. So let's say he says, you know what, I really want this one, so he keeps that. This would get discarded, which then means I am left with this one. Oh, hey, I choose that, and that would add it into my hand. Easy enough. Those are the first 2 actions, and those are the only 2 that I'm going to go over in detail as I did. The next 5 resolve the exact same way. Again, ties broken left to right, highest bid. However, I'm going to point this out here. It shows that if you are first, you get to take any 3 action value or any 3 action points worth of either a deploy or a task action. I will pause for a moment and now point this out as to what that means. Each action, or each groups of actions, so the soldier here, you'll notice, has 2 deploy actions with this symbol on it, and each other one, or the third one, is always a task action with that icon next to it. So you'll notice that out here on the main board, it's 3 actions, any mix that you choose. If you are second, again, talking about a 4-player game, you either can take 2 deploy actions or 1 task action. Okay? If you are third, you can take any 1 action. If you are fourth, you can only take the deploy action. You can't even take the task action. Regardless of what you bid, if you are fourth in bidding amount, then you cannot take the task action for the respective actions. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right. So now what we're going to do very briefly is talk about these first 3 actions. There are 2 deploy actions for each of them, as you see here, and 1 task action. The deploy actions are very easy. The deploy says you can take 1 of your meeples and put it out into their respective spot, whether it's a soldier action, a spy action, or a merchant action. So if I were resolving a soldier one, it would be put a soldier out. In addition to that, if I had any soldier cards, workforce cards that were in my hand, I then could play any number of mix of soldier cards and or jokers. So even though I only get to place 1, if I had a hand of 5, there is no hand limit. If I had 5 soldier cards and or jokers, and that allowed me to move up 7 spaces, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, boom, done. That is placing from here out there. And that's the same whether it's the soldier, the spy, or the merchant. The second deploy action is going to be moving soldiers either from your home territory out into the neutral area, and the amount you can move is based on where this marker is. So you'll notice now, if I had 2 out here, I'm allowed to move 2 from here out to there. If they were already there, I can then move them from here to one of my opponent's battlefields at that point. And that is a maximum that you can move for 1 action point. And that is the exact same whether it's soldier, spy, or merchant. Okay? And then the last one is a task action, which is going to be a little bit more complex. This is an attack action. Here, if they're soldiers, there is a subterfuge action for spies and a commerce action for merchants. I'm not going to go over those, though. When we actually take those actions, we'll go over them then. The banker action, which is this one here, for the most part, the banker and the scholar, the last 2, don't have to do with a lot of stuff out here. It has to do with your tracks here. The banker says discarding any amount of banker cards to be able to move up the banker track. So the wealth track, easy enough. The exception to that rule that I just talked about is the next one, which is the second deploy action for the banker. Here, it says use the advance, the sneak, or the caravan action as if it were those actions. So what does that mean? Moving people from here to there or here out to the various spaces. Then again, there is a task action, which is going to allow you to play these cards out to here, which then corresponds with your wild bidding token there. I suppose I ought to talk about this one a little bit in depth. The grant action says you can spend 1 additional action point, 2 total, to then be able to choose one of your 5 special rule breaker guild cards to then play it into your tableau. If you then play it into your tableau like so, anytime you use this bid token and you declare it is a 1 value as opposed to a 2 value, you then can activate any 1 card, guild card, that's in your tableau and do whatever the guild card allows you to do. Lastly, the scholar action here is, again, allows you to discard any amount of scholar workforce cards or jokers to be able to move up the track, draw the top card from the workforce deck, or advance 1 on the alms track. So the alms track here does nothing except when you hit these 3 spaces, advance 1 on the diplomacy track, advance 1 track of your choice, draw 1 workforce card. They do nothing else except Whenever you advance on the alms track, you're going to be able to get rid of Anarchy. I'll talk about that in a moment. And finally, it's worth 5 victory points at the end of the game. Now, one of the actions, whenever you are moving up this here, let me try that again. Anytime you take the spy action, which is subterfuge, you're going to be able to move up here, which is going to be a multiplier for the amount of during the game cards that you have scored for endgame scoring. The last thing I'll talk about before we get started is Anarchy and bonus actions. At any given time on these 5, whenever you take an action, you can choose to drop your track down 1 or possibly multiple spaces for that many then additional actions. So if this were where it is here and I'm taking the soldier action, and maybe let's say I'm second, so I would get maybe 2 deploy actions. So I put 2 out there, done. But then I say, hey, I'm going to spend 1 more action to then take another deploy action or an advance. And because of where this is, I can move 2 to there. That costs me 1 of those tracks, or bumping back 1 space. I can then do it again if I want to take 1 of the 3 available actions. However, any time that you voluntarily move this back to be able to take additional actions past these lines, these breaks, you then are going to take an Anarchy. These Anarchy tokens, whenever you take them, are going to go into the bottom of your board. They're going to be worth negative points at the end of the game based on the highest taken number of Anarchy. So if all of those are gone and say 2 of these are gone, each Anarchy marker is going to be worth minus 2 points at the end of the game. However, advancing on the alms track will then allow you to remove or replace, get rid of 1 Anarchy. And there are other things during the game that will possibly give you more Anarchy, but we'll cover those as we go along. We're going to go through this 6 times. At the end of all that, there is a reset phase, which is we're going to discard the merchant card and flip up the new one. We're going to discard the Royal Decree, flip up a new one. Any existing workforce cards will be wiped. We will put out 5 new ones. We will advance the turn marker there. And then we'll do that 6 times. Then we'll go into endgame scoring. And here, I'll bring it over here. Endgame scoring is your guild cards, meaning have you played guild cards to your tableau, 0, 2, or 4 points. In-game claims, i.e. those blue cards as I showed you earlier. End game claims, so those are worth a max of 5 points each. So if you've reached all of those can be worth up to 15. Unfulfilled claims, meaning those blue cards, the -3. How many of those? The diplomacy track is that multiplier, as I mentioned here, based on the number of in-game cards that you've scored. So if it were here at the 4, it would be 4 times the number of cards. So if I completed 3, that would be worth 12 additional points. The alms track, if you reach the end, is worth 5. Anarchy track, as I mentioned, minus points based on the value and how many Anarchy cubes you have. And then influence tokens. There are influence tokens that can be acquired. Those are victory points. So if you get any influence tokens throughout the game, you just hold on to them. Those are victory points. Then you're going to score where you are on each of your 5 tracks. The victory point numbers at the very top, obviously -1 point, 0, 1, 2, 3, or 5, if your marker ends up there at the end of the game. Whoever has the most points wins and has to take all of their completed goal cards, both in game and end of game, put your name and read it all together, and that is your title to go down to live in, hopefully, history or infamy, depending on how nasty you were. And that's how you play Throne of Allegoria. Any questions? Good, we'll move on. Here we go.